The Zarlum Chronicles, Episode 2, Part 7. After the war that killed millions, the monks were understandably frustrated with the resilience of the Zerm race. Somehow their empire was still standing, but the pillars were extremely shaky. They had showed them two godlike beings, and yes, it was true they had affected the world, but the world would always survive. So what were they meant to do with the annoying cockroaches that were the Zerm race? The monks decided to take their revenge on just one, Delphine. Zenith was very displeased with the death of his one and only beloved daughter, resulting in him placing upon Delphine a curse, which began causing her biggest fear to come true. Very slowly.
However, Delphine naturally didn't realize this as she sailed back home. When she arrived back, her husband and daughter, who hadn't seen her in years, hugged her, very happy she had returned alive and safe, like so many others hadn't. It didn't take very long for Delphine to realize that her luck had been turned from bad to so much worse, unnervingly fast. The first thing that happened literally happened a week after the vampire events. Their car ran off the road, nearly killing them. They thought it was a little weird, but didn't pay any attention to it. It was just a car accident. Barely a week later, their house burned down and nearly killed their daughter. Delphine had a lot of paranoia, so believed someone set the fire, and it was no accident. She had no proof if it was or wasn't, and every day her paranoia would get worse and worse. But to her, it wasn't paranoia, because the things she was worrying about were true and were happening. However, it was about to get a lot worse.
They went from living in a nice house with an expensive car and a lovely farm to living in the streets barely a month after the war with the Dracula. Delphine had no other choice than to go back into her old work, so she tried to get some assassin bounties. However, every time she tried to make a kill, someone would take the prize before her, or she would be nearly killed, or something would get in the way. She just seemed to be so unlucky. The worst thing that happened was when she had a perfect aim for a target. Then just as she went to pull the trigger, a rock under her knee shifted for no reason at all, making her miss the shot. So the man was able to get away. After 12 attempts, she got the message. She was the woman with the worst luck on Zarlum. She began to realize it wasn't natural. Delphine tried a few things to stop the luck, like special stones or spells. However, nothing seemed to stop it. Zenith was a lot more powerful than anything she could possibly use. When Delphine realized nothing was working, she finally gave in and went to an expert who informed her that there was a spell which had the power to give the worst luck to not just herself, but her family, which was her biggest fear. Something happening to her family because of her. According to the curse, it wasn't going to stop. It was a simple spell, but quite unbreakable. The only way she would be able to get it off would be to go to the person who cast it. There were other ways, but it involved extreme dark magic that would result in damaging the soul to the point of not even being a person anymore. What horrified Delphine the most was the fact that the curse would not only give them bad luck, it would force them to live through it. If she tried to kill herself, the curse would make sure the guns would misfire, and the knives would be too dull to cut the skin. All poisons and sickness would affect her, however, wouldn't kill her. Despite that her family was able to die like any other person, that was what terrified Delphine. She didn't mind having bad luck herself, but she couldn't stand her family having bad luck. Delphine had to protect her family and break the curse. To do that, she would need to find who cast it somehow. She had a plan to go straight to Zenith and threaten to kill him until he removed the spell. However, that was quite impossible. 1, he was just too powerful, and 2, he was the most heavily protected man on the entire of Zarlum. Even if she did go to him, it would already be too late for her.
After the expert gave her that information, the man immediately wanted nothing to do with her because the bad luck could very easily start affecting him, which wasn't something he was very willing to put himself through. Delphine returned to the hotel they had been staying in all that time. When she entered the room, it was unnervingly silent. She slowly stepped in the room, immediately seeing the worst sight she could have possibly imagined. Her husband was laying on the ground next to the bed with his throat slit and 15 stab wounds to his chest. Delphine fell against the door, holding the sides of her head, screaming in anger and incredible pain, knowing that she could have stopped it. The wounds were fresh, maybe done 5 to 10 minutes before she got there. She began convulsing around in anger and pain, screaming louder than she had ever screamed in her entire life. She had known pain, but nothing like this. She called the police and hoped they would help her, which, of course, was what the police were meant to do. However, they just added to her bad luck, stating it wasn't someone who did it, it was himself. Despite the fact that he had 15 stab wounds and slit his own throat. When she told the police that, they looked into her past and became convinced she had done it. They were going to arrest her. But because there were no witnesses, they couldn't prove it was her, so they let her go. She tried to do her own investigation of who did it, like the cameras. However, of course, none of the cameras were facing the room, because why would they be with her luck? Delphine went to all the assassin houses in the area, beating no information out of them. No one knew who had done it. She even called Willow, but she had no idea.
Delphine was heartbroken, but she still had her daughter and wanted to make sure it stayed that way. So she quickly moved herself to a safe house with her daughter, who was the only family member she had left. She felt like her heart had been ripped into 1,000 pieces by an ice-cold knife. She felt like she couldn't be an assassin and also protect her daughter at the same time. However, because she had been an assassin and been arrested, it wasn't like she could just go and get another job. She needed to get rid of the curse. But it would rip her soul in half and corrupt her to do it because of the dark magic. And she could end up losing her daughter anyway. However, she had to do something to get rid of this luck, and fast. That was when she had a truly horrible idea. She went to the only people who could get the curse off her, the monks. She knew the monks had been the ones to put the curse on her, and knew they were her former enemy. However, she had become extremely desperate to do anything to ensure her daughter would be safe. Delphine traveled to Dirham, having no idea that's where Zenith was. She had no idea it was Zenith that did it. She assumed it was just a random monk that did it. When she arrived at Dirham, she went to the entrance of the Dirham catacombs. When she entered, she was horrified by the thousands of fallen souls, forever trapped screaming in pain and horror at their reality. She went into the temple, surprised that the guards didn't stop her like they did to so many others before, because the monks knew she would turn up eventually, so told the security not to act when she arrived. Delphine didn't question it because she wanted to get into the catacombs, desperate to get the curse off her, so she didn't think about it, not realizing she was being trapped. When she arrived in the tombs, the monks almost killed her. But Zenith told them to back down because he wanted to hear what she had to say. They knew she was under the curse and could use her. They acted like they didn't know why she was there, so they could manipulate her more and more. She sat down with the monks, which was an incredibly rare thing to be able to do. She explained she needed her daughter to stay alive. She was the only thing in the world she had left. And if she was going to protect her, she needed the curse off her. They asked her a very dangerous question. What would she do if they took the curse off her? What would they get in return? They were never going to do it for no reason. She replied with an answer that would curse her for the rest of her life, much worse than before. Anything. Everything. I've got nothing else left to lose apart from my daughter. I'll do anything to keep her." That was all the monks needed to rule over her life forever, her obedient consent. And now they had it. She was their puppet, whether she liked it or not. She was trapped now. The monks gave her a list with one name written upon it in scarlet blood of the person the name belonged to. Delphine was pretty confused, so the monks explained.
"Any name on this list must be killed, and I mean anyone. As long as you get a name off the life every 3 days, your daughter will remain safe here with us. However, if the name of the target is not killed at the end of those 3 days, then your daughter will die."
Delphine realized that she was an assassin, but killing a person every 3 days was just too much for her. She tried to make another deal with them, however, she was already holding the list, and the moment she grabbed it, the curse wrapped strings around her arms and legs to turn her into a puppet. So there was nothing she could do. She was trapped by it. What the monks didn't tell her was the list would make her be unable to age or end her life. The only way she could die was if someone killed her, and that would become very problematic later. The list would also corrupt the appearance and the soul of the person holding it. Delphine had accidentally just entered the dark magic she didn't want for herself. Delphine left her daughter with the monks, explaining that she would be safe, and her mother needed to do some work. However, she would always be safe. She decided not to tell her the truth of how she was protecting her because she didn't want her to know about all the horrible things she had to do. She told her she was working with the monks and the army to improve the world, making it a much better place. But to do that, she had to fight. What she was actually doing was being an omen of death. Delphine immediately started killing the targets. A year later, she had killed a lot of people, and she had again made a name for herself. But it wasn't a good name. She was known as the Dark Angel, or the Touch of Death, or the Omen of Death. She learned a lot about her curse, like the fact that she truly was completely trapped in her agreement. Even if she threw the list away or destroyed it, the list would kill her and her daughter anyway. It showed her that by punishing her, causing her daughter to get sick, almost dying, having to go into a hospital for a few weeks, she also learned if she gave the list to someone else, it would punish her in the same way. There was truly no way to get out of her agreement. She was completely trapped. The way the list would punish her was not by making her sick or by just simply killing her. The monks would summon skeletons which were impossible to kill and could only be seen by the people they were killing. They would never stop hunting down the people until they were dead. They could pass through walls and even teleport, so there was no escaping them. Delphine was sent a few warning skeletons to make her understand what would happen, and she got the message very quickly and stayed in line with what the monks and the list wanted. She also learned the person who came up on the list would become an anomaly for those 3 days. They couldn't get sick, and if someone else tried to kill them, they would be completely immortal to anyone but Delphine. She also had to travel across the world constantly to get the kills, and that worried her, because the more she killed, the more she would be noticed and the harder it would be. Delphine began to get worried. She began to notice that no one was off limits to the list. When she was an assassin, she had rules and things she would never do, such as kill anyone innocent, or kill anyone who was in law enforcement. However, the list didn't seem to care about her rules and just made her kill anyone. She began to notice the list wasn't random at all. It seemed to choose people who were not believing in the monks' belief, or government officials who worked with the court, which was all of them. But Delphine didn't know that. The court didn't care about her killing people. In fact, she barely even got herself noticed by them.
But when she started killing the government people, they noticed and started planning how to defeat her. However, she was a lot more skilled than any assassin they could send after her. After 6 years of killing people and signing herself to the list, she had killed roughly 730 people and had given up on asking about the demands of the list and had horribly got used to killing people and really just didn't care anymore. At the start of the list getting worse, she started feeling horrible about it. But in the past year, she stopped feeling things altogether, which was a side effect of the list taking over her mind. So when the list told her to kill children, she didn't even think she just did it, and horribly saw it as easier than killing others because they couldn't defend themselves. When she first got the list, she was terrified it would give her a name she wouldn't be able to find because there was a lot of people in the world. Luckily, the list had thought of that, and when it gave her a name, she immediately got a strange sense of where the person was in the world, like she just immediately knew where they were and was able to make her way over to them. She originally used guns, however, strangely switched to knives and swords because no one would sell her any bullets because of her reputation. Over the many years, Delphine had been extensively noticed. People were terrified of her because anyone's name could come up on the list, and there was nothing they could do to stop her. They couldn't change their name, they wouldn't fight her off, they wouldn't hide. Mainly because they had no idea they were being selected. But even if they did want to fight her, it would be simply impossible. They called her the Angel of Death because she became the embodiment of death. There were many stories about her, like how she looked, such as people believed she looked like a skeleton and wearing a black cloak. The cloak was true because she had started hiding her identity, and the only reason people said she looked like a skeleton was because her face had become so thin, and she spent so much time underground with the monks she rarely saw sunlight, so her face was ghostly pale. From a distance, she looked like she had no skin. She had no idea of the fact that her appearance would set the stage for hundreds of legends and stories in the future, and her look would become the image of Death himself. Most people wouldn't know where the look actually came from and just assume it was from a story. But no, it all started from Delphine. Part of the reason she was so thin was because she had stopped taking care of herself. She only cared about her daughter, and no one could take her mind off that, not even her own health. However, most of the reason was because over time, the list would corrupt the person more and more. Soon, she would look unimaginable. She was becoming more evil as time went on. She was becoming more and more emotionless. Even the monks had no idea what she was going to become and were watching from the shadows, treating her as an experiment. Delphine made the curse even worse by the fact she didn't want her daughter to see her looking like that. So she hadn't seen her daughter in years, but got info about her from the various monks.
It seemed no one would be even capable of stopping her. The police and even the court had been attempting to find and kill her for all 5 years of her fighting. However, they was able to easily avoid them. It was like the list was giving her information about exactly where the police were at all times. And even if they were able to find her, she seemed to be able to disappear into fog or steam coming out of sewage pipes, which was extremely common for criminals and assassins who were all experts in hiding themselves and avoiding detection. It was just part of the job. What the police never knew was the fact that she was traveling and escaping through the sewers. She only came out when she needed to kill, and would use them to get directly over the target. So it was nearly impossible for the police to find her, making her the world's first and worst serial killer that would ever be on the planet by far. The court really hoped that the assassins would be able to find her, not because they wanted her to stop killing their subjects, but they didn't like the thought of them being on that list. One who was mysteriously still alive by this stage had hidden himself in a vault hundreds of meters deep just in case he appeared on the list. He had a theory: if he made it impossible for her to get to him in the 3 days, she would die. However, he still had people searching for her everywhere, hoping they would find her. But no, even if they assumed she was in the sewers, she would be able to kill them. She had adapted to them a lot better than they ever would. Her old crew met up and started discussing what to do with her, having obviously heard the many stories about her. It felt horrible for them to have to kill their friend, but they had no choice. However, with that decision decided, they tried to find her to no avail at all. She was an expert at staying completely hidden, knowing her friends were probably trying to find her.
On a completely normal day, Delphine woke up deep underground like usual and checked her list, completely indifferent, like normal. Until her eyes fell upon the name, and her blood ran ice cold. It felt like life had just punched her in the face as hard as it could. Even the list had turned against her, because the name written in blood upon the old yellow paper was Cora. That was exactly what she knew was going to one day happen. The list would test her and push her and see how much she truly cared about her daughter. Would she even let her friends die to make sure she lived? Delphine was heartbroken, but had become so corrupted by the list, she thought it was justified. She picked up her supplies and her cloak, beginning her journey.
Delphine began to travel through the sewers towards Cora, knowing that when she was dead, her other friends would begin coming over to her. But that was okay, because she assumed the list would just give her the names for her to kill them anyway. After a few hours of moving under the surface of the planet, she finally arrived under the house Cora was staying in and started preparing her weapons, knowing it wasn't going to be easy to fight her. Because they trained together, she had learned most of what she knew from Cora. As she prepared herself, she got flashes of memories of when her and Cora killed people together, ate together, laughed together, cried together. It was difficult for her to think of those memories, and also get her head around the fact she was about to go up and kill the person who shared those memories with her, but had no choice.
Delphine got out the sewers. She broke in through the back window, trying to be as silent as possible, because being an assassin and having paranoia went perfectly hand in hand, and silence was almost second nature. It felt like all her muscles were trying to pull her back outside to not do what she had to do. However, her mind was able to ignore that, because her brain was stronger than her heart could ever be, because of the effects given by the list, and the thought of her daughter pushed her forward. Delphine looked around the downstairs of the house thinking Cora was down there. However, it was midnight, so clearly she was in bed upstairs. Delphine began to go up the stairs, hearing the thudding of her footsteps on each wooden step. Her cloak and her pale face really did make her look demonic as she rounded the corner, like a shadow moving through the house. She slowly opened the wooden door, hearing it creak to a stop, which made her worried Cora would know she was there, not really knowing she had made a big mistake even before that. Delphine slowly entered the dark room. Noticing her shadow from the light of the doorway, she moved over the bed, seeing the shadow rippling across the blanket, eventually getting to the shape of Cora, sleeping, facing away from her. However, she didn't do anything. She just stared at her for a few moments, then sighed, looking down like her mind was conflicted. However, it wasn't. She was just observing her for a few moments. Delphine looked back up. "You realize I literally taught you this trick, right?" She quickly spun around, removing a sword from her belt, swiftly blocking a blow from Cora, who had been slowly trying to sneak up behind her, coming from her closet. Delphine knew she had to act fast. She kicked Cora in the stomach, knocking her against the wall, then turned back to the shape on the bed, which was a person, lifting the blanket off themselves to grab a gun. However, before she could fire it, Delphine stabbed the woman in the throat, sending her blood everywhere. Before the woman could even have the chance to die, Delphine kicked her head back into the pillow, turning it from white
to a crimson shade of red as she drowned in her own blood, gurgling horribly.
Delphine turned back to Cora, who was furious.
You fucking bitch!
Delphine approached her. I'm not doing this out of maliciousness. I need you to understand that before I do this. Cora shook her head.
I don't really care. You just killed my fucking wife.
Delphine sighed. I thought you didn't want attachment. And next time you should use a decoy you don't care about. That's decoy 101. Cora shook her head.
Maybe if you weren't trying to kill me, I wouldn't have to worry. I knew you would come for me.
Delphine nodded. Then you know why I have to do this.
Cora ran forward, and they immediately started sword fighting, clashing their swords together extremely quickly.
Cora tried to swing at Delphine, missing, accidentally sticking her sword in the wooden banister. She tried to pull it out, but with her distracted, Delphine kicked her down the stairs, watching her roll over herself a few times, eventually landing below with a loud clang. Delphine jumped over the banister, flying down to the ground. When her heavy boots hit the floor, a pool of dust rose. The shock of the landing shook the entire house. A few glass cups in a display case fell out, smashing to the ground. Delphine slowly began to approach Cora, dragging her sword across the ground as Cora tried kicking herself away, being unable to stand from the pain.
Wait, please, Delphine. Listen, please, we talk about this.
Delphine paused, looking at her. Before she entered the house, Cora was her friend, someone she really cared about. However, looking at her, try to get away from her, looking terrified, the only thing Delphine could think was, she is pathetic. Cora had been reduced down to a pathetic woman on the ground, meaning nothing. That was the legacy she was going to leave behind, and there was nothing that Delphine could do about it. Delphine shook her head. I'm sorry, Cora. I truly am. But the truth is, there is nothing for us to talk about here. I am doing this, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. I just need you to know that I am sorry for doing this. I feel like I at least owe you that much after everything we have been through.
Cora finally realized the truth. Delphine wasn't ever going to stop. She couldn't talk her way out of what was going to happen. The only thing she could do was fight back. Cora kicked Delphine in the shins before she could react. As she stood up, she delivered a devastating uppercut to Delphine's jaw, knocking her backward. In her confusion, she accidentally tripped over her own black cloak, resulting in her falling to the ground. That gave Cora the upper hand because the roles had been reversed. But sadly enough, Delphine didn't care. She was never at a disadvantage because she had more fighting experience than Cora, and she had more of a reason to fight. Delphine quickly got to her feet, swinging her sword down on Cora's hand, slicing an incredibly deep cut, beginning to pour her red blood everywhere. However, she was trying to prevent it. Cora put her hand to the cut, screaming in pain as blood gushed everywhere. Cora looked over to a display case to her right, seeing her many swords, so ran to grab one. But she knew it was for nothing. Even if Cora somehow managed to get the locked case open and grab his sword, because of all the pain in her hand, she didn't have a chance against Delphine. Delphine saw her attempt and just decided to fix the problem by delivering an equally devastating slice to the other hand, seeing more of her blood spill from her body. She then kicked Cora into her living room, watching her land on her sofa, spreading her blood across the leather, knowing that her life was over, and there was nothing she could do about it. Delphine entered the room slowly. She raised her sword, placing it against Cora's throat. Cora knew she was going to die, so decided she would torture Delphine by putting doubt in her mind, even after she was dead.
What the fuck are you doing?
She said in a weak voice.
What I have to!
Yelled Delphine, hearing her voice crack like concrete being hit by an axe.
Cora started crying, trying to lift herself up a little.
However, Delphine used the sword to push her back down.
Stop trying to fight with me, Cora. This is the end.
Please, I can help you. Please, just let me help you. Let me get Willow and Ruby over here, please.
Delphine genuinely seemed to consider her offer.
No. If they come over, they'll see what I did to you, and they'll kill me.
No, I'll make sure they won't. I swear to you, they won't kill you. I won't allow it. You've made mistakes, but you did them for the right reason. This is about the monks, right? The monks? Maybe we can help. Together, we can take the monks down.
The monks are everywhere. Killing them will be impossible. No one can help me. Anything you do will only make it worse. Cora tried to plead with her.
Please, we're friends. That should at least mean something. Look at everything you've done. All the people you've killed. Is all of this really worth it? I know you lost things, but because you lost things, you are going to lose everything else. You can't keep doing this.
Delphine paused for a second, then nodded. I know we're friends, and I hope one day you can forgive me.
Cora screamed in terror, knowing what was going to happen. She plunged her sword deep into Cora's neck. A long line of crimson blood poured from her throat. Delphine pulled her sword from her throat, watching her be unable to breathe or speak. Cora looked at her for the last time as her eyes went glassy and the color drained from her skin. Delphine looked down, then went over to her fire, removing the grate and setting the fire, watching as it spread through the house slowly. Delphine went to the window she had come through, looking back at the body of Cora as it burned to a crisp. She wasn't really sure how she felt and struggled to put it into words. A single tear went down her face as she nodded.
I'm sorry, but I had to do this.
She jumped out the window, going into the sewers. She felt horrible, however. She knew it was going to get a lot worse. She knew the next name on the list would probably be the easier kill, and that was Ruby. Then it would be a harder kill, Willow, who was better at fighting than she was, and she was worried about that. But she was more worried about the fact that the list would then get worse. But with her 3 friends dead, what could possibly be worse than that? The president? The queen? What would she have to do next? Delphine looked down at the list. She already knew who it was going to be. The list declared that Ruby would be the next body on the ever-growing pile. However, that would be a lot more difficult with Ruby. Because Cora was dead, it wouldn't take long for Ruby and for Willow to find out she knew for a fact that Ruby visited Cora every week to check how she was doing. And that day fell the next morning, so Delphine had to start planning around killing Ruby. The next day, Ruby went to the house, seeing it was burned to the ground. She pushed past the police easily, going to the living room, seeing her dead body. It didn't take a genius to see that Cora had been in a big fight, and clearly she lost. However, it didn't make sense, because even Ruby wouldn't be able to win against Cora. No one would. She was very good at taking care of herself. It could only mean one thing. Ruby went outside to a payphone, beginning to call Willow in a panic. And that panic wasn't helped by the fact that it took a few attempts to get in touch with her. When Willow finally picked up, Willow sounded slightly frustrated, and almost sounded like she was struggling with something. If Ruby had called any other person, she would assume they were in the gym or just working out somehow. However, Ruby knew better. Willow quickly asked, "What?"
Sorry, are you in the middle of something? Did I call it a bad time?
Actually, yes. Yes, I am. Do you mind just giving me a second here?
Ruby nodded.
Sure, yeah, go for it. Take all the time you need.
Willow nodded.
Thank you.
Willow put the phone down for a second, wrestling with the man who she was holding down in a bath of water, trying to drown him,
However, for reasons she didn't understand, he didn't really want to be drowned. She pulled his head out the water, grabbing a knife from behind her. As she did, he yelled,
I told you! I didn't realize who she was!
Willow shook her head.
The details don't have anything to do with me. I just do my job. And the job is killing you, unfortunately.
She slit his throat, watching his blood spit from him into the bathtub. Willow put his head back into the water, watching the blood spread out, turning the water from clear to red very quickly. Willow stood up, feeling like her muscles had been working overtime to hold him down. She grabbed the phone, walking over to the window.
Sorry about that. What is it?
Did you just get off a job?
Yes, I did. Some guy kidnapped the wrong guy's daughter for the wrong reasons. Doesn't matter. What do you want?
We have a problem.
I know. You never ring for a friendly chat. You have Cora for that. I'm not good with people problems. What is the problem?
Where are you right now?
Paris. Why? You're not trying to get me done by the police, are you?
No, nothing like that. Cora is dead, and I had to make sure it wasn't you.
Willow looked shocked.
Are you fucking serious? I would never kill her. Don't ever think I would kill my friends.
Sorry, but the point is she's dead. And you didn't do it. I didn't do it. So I think we both know who did.
Willow paused for a second, then nodded.
Give me 3 hours.
For what?
I'm on my way. And I'm going to kill the bitch.
But what if she still has a soul? What if we can help her?
Maybe we could have before she killed Cora. Not anymore. You can try whatever you want. I don't give a shit. But when I get there, she is dead. No questions asked.
Willow then hung up on Ruby. Willow looked out the window knowing what she had to do. They were probably next on the chopping list. So now it was a kill or be killed scenario. Willow noticed a bird land next to her. She looked down, then saluted because it was a magpie, and that's just what you do on Zarlum. She felt strange. It almost felt like it was a warning, but didn't know what to make of it. The warning couldn't be to run. If she came on the list, she would be attacked. She wanted to attack first, so she could have the upper hand. She left Paris and started heading towards the center of the mainland like a tornado of rage. However, Ruby unwisely decided she would try to face against Delphine by herself. She knew if Willow was there, then it would immediately start a fight, and she wouldn't have the chance to at least talk to Delphine, having no idea that it was already too late for her. She had crossed a line. She would never be able to get across. She truly was too far gone, and there was nothing Ruby could do to save her. End of Episode 2, Part 7.